You all know the game of Frisbee. You throw a plastic disc, and someone or a dog catches it. What most people don't know is that the original Frisbee wasn't designed to be a toy. Frisbee pies made amazing fruit pies, and they also made the tins that they were baked in. According to legend, kids figured out that these discs were aerodynamic and started tossing them around, and a sensation was born. As product leaders, we all want people to love the products that we create. But sometimes people use them in completely unexpected ways, and ways that we could never have predicted. Now, many of us go into product because we want to create. We love to create. We're makers at heart. But product leadership is more than just making something amazing and sharing it with the world. True product leadership is taking responsibility for the ways in which people use our product. It requires vision, an understanding of human nature and how the zeitgeist and the cultural norms are evolving, a keen sense of observation, and the ability to own the impact of our products in the world. The stakes are particularly high in tech, especially as for our products, millions, if not billions of users get to use them, and often before we're ready for them to be used by that many people. True product leadership is product stewardship. Recently, we've become painfully aware of what can happen when politicians and the media encourage and amplify the most virulent voices. About a week ago, the New York Times wrote an in-depth investigation into the increase of violence by white supremacists and far-right extremists. The reporter, Janet Reitman, was able to put some figures together that kind of gave credence to what many of us have been feeling, that domestic terrorism in America has been getting worse. More vitriol on social media, more violence at protests, more attacks on people of color, gay people, non-Christian people, immigrants, refugees. Reitman wrote that the number of terror-related incidents has more than tripled since 2013, and the number of those killed has more than quadrupled. And the scary thing about these stats is it doesn't even include the past 3 weeks. And that's really telling in itself because those numbers have only gone up. With the massacre in the synagogue in Pittsburgh and the bombs sent to anti-Trumpers. Here's why I'm telling you this. Prior to their violent rampages, the suspects in both of these cases had been very vocal about their beliefs on social media. There, they found a community that agreed with them and cheered them on. When I was at eBay, we prided ourselves on being a well-lit place to trade. You probably all know the founding story. Pierre Omidyar created an online marketplace for his then girlfriend so she could trade Pez dispensers. eBay's marketplace evolved into an engine of entrepreneurial growth. The company's mission was to empower people by connecting millions of buyers and sellers and creating economic opportunity. But Pierre knew right from the beginning that there would be bad actors. So we always did two things. One, we invested a significant amount in our trust and safety teams. And two, we looked at usage patterns. And as we scaled, we started to see people using eBay in ways we could never have predicted. One example was we started noticing that people were selling cars on eBay. And with that, eBay Motors was born. Great example. But we also noticed people trading some very disturbing items. There we go. Including swastikas and Nazi memorabilia. And we talked about how to handle it. We asked ourselves a whole bunch of questions. Who are we? What do we believe? Why did we create this product? And most importantly, what do we want to enable? Once we framed it in terms of our values, the decision became very clear. We decided to ban all Nazi memorabilia along with other hate-related propaganda. Now, this was not a case of scrubbing content for puritanical values. As many of you may know, eBay is also a great place to buy and sell porn. And it wasn't a quick or easy decision. As a large company, it took us many conversations, it took us time, it took us debates. But in the end, we refused to let eBay's marketplace be used as a tool by a group of people who wanted to hurt other people. It's just not who we wanted to be. Now, there are many ways to enable hate groups. One is by giving them a megaphone. Another is by giving them safe haven. In the weeks leading up to Unite the Right, there was a steady drumbeat the organizers tried to create to get media attention. But someone else was paying attention: Airbnb. They noticed that many of the people who were traveling for the rally were also staying at Airbnbs. And they didn't want to enable this group of people. So they figured out who was traveling there for the rally and canceled their accounts. Airbnb's mission of belonging means that members of the community accept people regardless of their race, religion, national origin, ethnicity, disability, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, or age. And what Airbnb's leadership team did is they made sure that their product lives by the same values. Now, not only did they want to keep the bad people out, the leadership team also focused on ways to encourage good behavior. In 2017, they launched Open Home, which is a way for people to help refugees by giving them a place to stay. Now, this wasn't just a static page or an empty press release. They actually built product to make this happen. They created a whole new marketplace to allow people to offer their homes for refugees or victims of disaster. Now, for these examples that make the world better, there are also some examples where tech makes it worse. There's a ton of research on the negative impacts of screen time. It makes it harder to learn, we perform worse on tests, we have memory lapses, and it takes away time from real-life connections and interactions. And there's plenty of data that shows that tech is addicting, but we don't call it that. We call it gamification. We want all our products to be highly engaging, because the platforms where people spend the most time are the most valuable. So we add rewards into the system, jolts of dopamine. So users come back more frequently, so they spend more money, so they invite more friends. Think about click to refresh, or pull to refresh. It's really brilliant. You're done with the content on a page, you just swipe down, boom, more content. You just never have to leave. The creator of that product is having second thoughts. He told a reporter, "I have spent many hours, weeks, and months, and years thinking about whether anything I've done has made a net positive impact on society or humanity at all." Study after study has shown that there's nothing called willpower. We are just weak. I would eat that. If we want to break addiction, we have to change our environment. And the people best suited to do it are the companies that create the product in the first place. Apple's taking some great first steps. Screen Time launched as part of iOS 12, and it offers great new tools to manage your and my addiction. So let me ask a question. How many of you have looked at your screen time and usage? Oh, less than I would have expected. How many of you who looked at it have set time limits? Fewer still. And how many of you break those limits? Okay, I'm definitely in that category. I know that the first day I turned it on and I set myself some limits, I was just horrified to find that by 9 a.m. I had hit my limits. 9 a.m. So the first step towards getting over addiction is to admit you're an addict. So here I am. Hi, my name is Shripriya. So Johnny Ive was recently interviewed about that, and he said it keeps him up at night. He said, there's a responsibility to try and predict as many consequences as possible. It's part of the culture at Apple to believe that there's a responsibility that doesn't end when you ship a product. I hope most of you were here for Marty's talk, and you recall how he started. It is a distressing time in tech, right? It's distressing to see ourselves on the front page for the reasons that we are. But I'm in a room full of product people. And product people are doers and problem fixers. In this room are 150 of the sharpest, most talented, most influential product people in the world. And you control the destiny of the most beloved products. You know as well as I do that there are lots of ways that technology can be misused, but you have the power to fix it. So I took a stab at a handful of steps we could take towards regaining some control over the way our products live in the world. Step 1, define. Before you begin designing, sit down with a team and define all the ways you want your product to be used and all the ways you don't want it to be used. Define the moral lines of what's acceptable for people to do with your product. Now, when you do this, you'll know where your line in the sand is. And as the world changes around you, you can make sure that that line doesn't change. Step 2, imagine. Imagine all the shit that people could do with your product. And ask everyone on your team to do the same. Don't just think that well-intentioned people are going to use the product. Think about the worst person you've ever met and think about what they could do with it. And then think about what are the incentives you can put in place in the product to design it to be used the way you want it to be and to prevent it to be used in the worst ways. Step 3 is communicate. Communicate your beliefs, values, and intentions to everyone on the team. If a stranger comes in and asks anyone, they should say the exact same thing. And this ensures that everyone on the team is bought into the same moral stand of what your product should and shouldn't do. And then when something goes wrong, instead of making hard decisions when things are blowing up, you already know what you've agreed to. Step 4 is measure. We measure everything. So let's start measuring how people are misusing our products. What early warning systems could you put in? When you're a startup, you could be forgiven for missing subtle signs that people are abusing your product. But as you grow, less so. So start reviewing the data on how people are using and misusing your product and do it at least once a quarter. And finally, do something. There will always be unexpected ways in which people use your product. But you now have a moral line in the sand, and you know when that line's been crossed, so you can take action. Technology should enhance human connection. It should help make the world better, and you can make that happen. The first step is for all of us to start seeing product leadership as product stewardship. Thank you.